Hey, what's going on, you guys? My name is the Raptor, and welcome back to another one of my Death Battle discussion videos. I've done a few of these in the past. If you're interested in seeing what those videos have to offer, you can click the links in the description below. I highly recommend checking them out. Because Death Battle is taking a break right now, in the middle of Season 7, I figured now might be a good time to do another one to kill some time. And this time we're going to be ranking the first 10 episodes of Season 7 of Death Battle in my own personal opinion. Of course, we all have our own opinions. There might be some stuff on this list that I don't like as much that you guys might like a lot, and if that's the case, then more power to you. I'm happy you can enjoy stuff that I can't get as much enjoyment out of, and I hope that you would react the same way if the roles were reversed, so it's all opinionated. Everything is opinions here, so let's all be civil about this and respectful of each other's opinions, and I do like a lot of these episodes on this list anyway, so just keep that in mind. And one more thing I want to say before we get into this is that the predictions that I've done for these battles don't have anything to do with my list making here, like not based on whether I got the predictions correct or how well they did view-wise or reception-wise or anything like that. So yeah, just keep that in mind. This is just me looking at the battles and talking about what I liked, what I didn't like, what I thought worked, what I thought didn't work, everything in my opinion, etc., etc. Okay? Cool. Alright, so let's move on right down the list. So, talking about number 10, in 10th place we have Black Canary versus Sindel. The reason why this one is at the very bottom of the list is because, one, I have a number of individual problems with this one. I think this is the one where I have the most individual problems with it, and also it's just not a very memorable fight or a very memorable episode in my opinion. And let's talk about the individual issues. It will take too long to go over all of them, but just going over some of them. I still don't like how Death Battle is using the whole test your might stuff in order to calculate Mortal Kombat characters' physical strength. You can argue whether or not it's actually fair to use that stuff, but the reason why I don't like it is because I feel like either way, it kind of puts Death Battle in a bad position, or it doesn't make them look very good. Because if it is the best feats that these characters have, then it's kind of obvious that they're pretty much outliers, or they shouldn't be taken so literally if it's so far off from the consistent feats that the other characters have. But even, or that these characters have, but, even if it is consistent with the feats that these characters have, then you should use the other feats, the stuff that's used in canon, the stuff that's more reliable, while also showing their best feats, you know what I mean? So I feel like either way, using Test Your Might just really doesn't work too well. I feel like it's always a risky move. But anyway, that's just, one of the things that Death Battle keeps doing. I know they're not really going to change that much, so, there's that. And talking about some of the other stuff, I remember before I was really surprised by how powerful Black Canary really was in terms of the physical stats. And there are still some parts about it that I don't love. Like, I don't really love how they said that she was 60 million times faster than Sindel, because even though she was able to keep up with Wonder Woman in a sparring match one time, I don't think that means that she'd be able to move that fast all the time throughout the entire fight, especially since she's more consistently shown moving at speeds significantly below that. I know she has other supporting feats to back that up, but regardless still, I feel like most consistently, I think putting her at 60 million times faster than Sindel is a little bit, overstating her abilities. But, I have learned to calm down a little bit about that because, she's definitely very strong despite being a peak physical condition human and everything like that. But yeah, it just has some individual issues throughout the analyses that I don't fully agree with. The episode is still enjoyable for what it is. Like, the animation is okay, but it's not anything amazing. It's still fun to watch. This is just one that I don't remember entirely fondly. I remember a lot of the episodes of this season very fondly, but this one is just one where I think back and I'm like, oh yeah, there's that one. And I might have been in a bad mood while I watched it anyway, so that might have contributed to it a little. But regardless, yeah, there's just some individual problems with it that really bring it down for me. If you like it, that's great, but I don't know, there are just some things about it that bug me. Anyway, moving down the list, so coming in at number 9 is Leonardo versus Red Ranger Jason. I know I said that Black Canary versus Sindel was really not too memorable, but this one for me is the least memorable out of all of them overall. For me, there's nothing really that stood out about it, nothing distinct that I remembered from it. Like, everything was okay, but it wasn't like particularly great or anything, you know what I mean? And when I think about all the episodes of Season 7, unless I go in chronological order, this is the one where I have the most trouble remembering that it was in this one. Whenever I think back to like the reaction that I did out of it, I'm like, oh yeah, Leo versus Jason happened this season. So, that's not a great thing, if I can't remember it as easily. And I will give credit where credit's due. The animation does sort of have a unique style style, which is really cool, even though I think it could have been longer and it was a little slow-paced, which is not a good combination for animation, at least in my opinion. And also I like how they centered more on just the Ranger rather than the Zords, like they've done for all the other episodes. So that was a really nice touch, or a really nice twist on what they normally do. But regardless, there's still nothing too extraordinary about it. Like, the animation is fine, the analyses are fine, the jokes are fine, but nothing's too great about it, you know? It's just meh, maybe a little more than meh, but still, mostly meh for me. And it's just the most bland for me. I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's not that it left me empty, but it warranted the least emotional response out of me. I don't really remember too many things from it, and while watching I'm like, okay, that happened, that was okay. I don't know. This might be coming off as a little mean, but I don't know. This one just didn't warrant the same emotional response that all the other ones did, and that's not a huge issue, because again, I like a lot of these episodes, but it does mean that it ranks pretty low among all the episodes. But anyway, that's just me. Moving on. So coming in at number 8 is Gray versus Esdeath. So this one is also pretty unmemorable for me, but it's for a completely different reason than for Leo versus Jason. This one is unmemorable for me because of my lack of familiarity with the characters, which is kind of on me. This is the most biased spot, I guess, on this list. And you know, because I'm familiar with Gray to a certain degree, with Fairy Tail and everything like that, but still not too much. And I didn't know anything about Esdeath or Akame ga Kill or anything like that before the death battle came out. So, you know, I feel like it's more forgivable. This is one of the reasons why it's higher than Leo versus Jason, because that's more on me rather than on them. And I feel like I would have liked it more if I knew more about the characters. And another reason why I really like this one more than Leo versus Jason is because I feel like it outdoes it in basically every area. I like the animation for this one significantly more. This is one that actually kept me on the edge of my seat, which is something that I can't say for all the death battles. So that's really cool. The analysis I also think is overall better, like the ending results or the conclusion, you know, the reasoning I think is also more polished. And like Leo versus Jason, that kind of stuff was still good, or was okay, but I didn't think it was as good as Gray versus Esdeath. But even still, you know, it's not one that I distinctly remember from this season. And you know, it was still an enjoyable episode for sure, and I still learned a lot about these characters, which is really great, but you know, just the fact that I'm not familiar with these characters, it's not one that I immediately jump to, you know what I mean? It's not anything like Cable versus Booster Gold where I'm like, oh yeah, I know these characters, and you know, I remember this battle. It's more like one where it's like, oh yeah, that was a battle between two characters that I just didn't really know. So again, not really Death Battle's fault, it's just unfortunate that it happened that way, that it's not one I remember too many things from. But again, still better than Leo versus Jason, because I think it just has better things overall with the battle, and it's not really Death Battle's fault that I don't remember it. So yeah, that's kind of unfortunate. But anyway, moving on. So speaking of Cable versus Booster Gold, coming in at number 7, we have Cable versus Booster Gold. This one for me is a very average Marvel versus DC fight, and that's kind of what I expected from this fight, you know, thinking Cable versus Booster Gold is probably going to be an average Marvel versus DC fight, but I actually really like that. Even an average Marvel versus DC fight for me tends to be really good, at least in my opinion, or it tends to be pretty good. And this one is pretty good. Overall, it's a pretty good episode. And you know, it has a unique concept, especially as far as Marvel vs. DC is concerned, so that's really great. And the animation beats are great, like they pull out a lot of the stops, you know, there's the banter, like the jokes that Booster Gold says, you know, that's really awesome that they included all of that. I wish they had Skeets in the animation, but, you know, whatever. You know, it's really fun to watch these characters fight and to learn more about the characters, and even though I don't particularly love either of them, and I still don't, it was still great to, you know, see what these characters are capable of and really delve into what they're capable of, especially since not many people know too much about them, so that's really cool. And the reasoning does make sense to me. Obviously, I understand the reasoning, it makes perfect sense to me. I definitely agree that Booster Gold would win against Cable. However, I do also hold that, or I do believe that if Booster Gold didn't have his force field, then Cable would have most likely won. And I know that sounds like such a fanboyish thing to say. You know, like, oh, if this character didn't have this thing, then, you know, the other character would have won, meh, you know, that kind of stuff. And also, the force field is so multi-purpose that it's basically taking away, you know, an amazing thing that Booster Gold has, you know, something that obviously he wouldn't have taken away. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, this is the one fight where I really realized that if a DC character is coming up in a death battle, and you don't really know who's gonna win, go with the DC character because they most likely have something insane, something absolutely overpowered, even if they're as unpopular as Booster Gold, you know what I mean? Like, the whole force field thing. And people were saying this before, and before I was like, well, DC characters are powerful, but I wouldn't say they're that powerful, but this is one where I was really like, okay, yeah, I totally understand what people are saying with this. So yeah, ultimately this one bugs me ever so slightly, just because, you know, I just know that, you know, if I had known about Booster Gold, you know, having the force field, I would have been like, oh, then that's kind of obvious, you know, or at least having the force field that's that powerful. And you know, it wasn't amazing by any stretch. Again, it was still very much an average Marvel vs. DC fight, but it was still an entertaining fight that makes sense to me, and I'm overall happy that it exists. Again, Marvel vs. DC fights, I'll probably enjoy them to a good degree anyway, so yeah, that's why I put it at number 7. Coming in at number 6, we have Shira versus Wonder Woman. Now, before I say anything, I want to say that for the most part, I thoroughly enjoyed this fight. This was a very well done fight for the most part. It was very well animated, of course. Like, there were so many fast-paced moments, and like the effects, like the glowing on the trees as they clashed was a really nice touch. You know, I could talk about this animation forever. It was so great. And it had solid reasoning and a quite good analysis for the most part. And yes, this does mean that DC's winning streak is continued even further, and that is annoying, but I do like that Death Battle is looking more at the individual battles as opposed to like a string of battles that needs a broken streak eventually, you know what I mean? Like, it should be based on the individual battle, not based on the season as a whole. So I'm glad that they're not they're not reading too much into that kind of stuff, because it should be about figuring out who beats who in a battle, you know? So I'm happy that they kind of proved that with this one. And this one would probably be higher on my list, higher than just number 6, if it didn't have a small number of things that just bug me quite a little bit. First of all, it is annoying to see Wonder Woman back, not just to see her back, but also to see her back in 3D, because she already had a 3D fight where she won, you know, against Thor, and I'm thinking like, you know, if you're doing a certain number of 3D fights per season, you don't need to give Wonder Woman yet another 3D fight, you know what I mean? Bringing her back is one thing, but giving her a 3D fight, another 3D fight, I think is a bit overkill, and you could have given that to another fight, you know what I mean? But anyway, that's just a little pet peeve of mine. I also think they lowballed Wonder Woman's durability pretty severely again. They didn't compare her directly to Flash in the same way that they did with Booster Gold, which is a little odd to me. Like, they still compared her to, like, Zoom, and they said that she was ridiculously fast, so that didn't really matter, but they were talking about how Booster Gold was able to tap into the Speed Force, and Wonder Woman definitely has more feats that prove that she could keep up with someone like Flash, and she's also tapped into the Speed Force, so I thought that was a little weird for me. Again, not too big of a deal, and this does once again prove that DC characters are OP like Booster Gold, you know, talking about Wonder Woman's speed, but, you know, Wonder Woman is such a popular character and such an overpowered character that everyone already knows about that, you know, that's not really as big a deal with Booster Gold, which is another reason why this is higher than Cable versus Booster Gold, you know, on top of it just being a better episode overall. But the durability of Wonder Woman really bugs me. Like, that one I still can't get behind. They put her at like 2 petatons of TNT, which is the same thing they did in Thor versus Wonder Woman, and this is such an obvious mistake. Like, of course she's at least planetary level, and even that seems like a lowball to me, you know, based on the characters she's been able to fight and take hits from, you know what I mean? And if this is such an obvious mistake, you know, one that I can point out without even doing any research, just knowing about the characters and knowing exactly what they're capable of, you know, it really weirds me out that Death Battle either missed it or they just decided to not say it, you know what I mean? Like, they could have said, you know, just, she's been able to take hits from Superman, you know, and taking hits from this character and this character and this character, so she's definitely planetary level, you know, that would have been perfect, but they just didn't want to do that, you know? So that was a little weird to me. And you know, this is arguably worse for people who don't know who Wonder Woman is, because I can always go back and say, like, okay, well, at least I know she's planetary level, but in terms of durability, but, you know, for people who are just learning about Wonder Woman's capabilities, they're thinking like, oh, so Wonder Woman can't survive a planet-busting attack, even though she definitely can, you know what I mean? But overall, yeah, I just think that this one, it has some problems, but overall, how good the other stuff is really takes it far. It's far above, you know, the other ones that I've said so far, by a significant margin, just because the animation is so good, the analyses are so good, and yeah, for the next 5 fights that are coming up in this list, I really have next to no problems with them. So again, you know, I really enjoyed this. It just falls, you know, in the second half of the list because I really enjoyed all the other ones. So speaking of that, let's get into it. So coming in at number 5 is Danny Phantom versus American Dragon Jake Long. Oh my god, this was one that so many people were excited for. Everyone was like, we want to see this fight, Danny Phantom versus Jake Long. Even before Danny Phantom was revealed to be in Season 7, everyone was like, we gotta see Danny Phantom versus Jake Long. It's gotta happen at some point. And sorry. And it's so cool to finally see it come. We have well-represented characters, at least in my opinion. We have a fun fight that pulled out a lot of the stops, not just in the animation, but also in the analyses. And, because these characters are quite versatile. Like, Danny's very versatile. Jake is also surprisingly versatile. So we have that as well. And freaking Butch Hartman got involved as well, which is so cool. It's so cool how the creator actually reached out and was so involved with, like, the supplementary material, after the, obviously as opposed to the actual death battle. And he commented on my prediction video as well, which is so cool. And there's a lot of funny bits in the analyses and in the animation. This was pretty much exactly what I expected, but my expectations were pretty high for this one. I was super excited to see what was going to come out of this fight, and it was so cool. If I have to say a couple things that I don't love about it, I really wish this animation was hand-drawn. I think this would have been a much better choice to be a hand-drawn fight than Genos versus War Machine, even though that was still a cool fight, and we'll talk about that one later, of course. But I just think this one would have been so cool in hand-drawn animation, and also I think this one was kind of unnecessarily short. Like, these characters bring so much to the table that I feel like they could have gone in more detail. This one just felt kind of short to me. But regardless, we finally have a kick-ass fight between these two kick-ass heroes, and I can revisit it whenever I want, and that's really all I wanted. I wanted a good fight between two awesome characters, and ultimately that's exactly what I got. I could have wished for a little more, but I think this is good enough, so that's why it's my number 5 spot. Coming in at number 4, we have Goro versus Machamp. When I first heard about this one, I'm like, oh, this sounds like it's going to be one that's forgettable. These characters, like, they have 4 arms, that's the best you can do, and everything like that. But it's definitely not a forgettable matchup. This is a really solid battle in terms of animation. The animation beats again, even just the banter between Goro and Machamp, even though Machamp can only say Machamp, is really funny at points. Like, it is really entertaining to watch. It's a well-made analysis. Again, like the animation, seeing the arms get ripped off of each other, like that was a really nice touch that I didn't expect was going to happen, but it is really cool to see. And they didn't use Test Your Might, which is so cool. I don't know, has Goro ever done a Test Your Might? That might have been the reason why they didn't do it. I'm not too familiar with Mortal Kombat, so he might have, he might not have. I'm not really sure. And I freaking love how they found supporting evidence to support all those Pokédex entries. You know what I mean? They didn't just say, oh, this Pokédex entry says that Machamp is capable of this, so he's capable of this. They actually went into more detail and got supporting evidence for all that stuff. I really like how they did that. That's a really nice way to analyze it, in my opinion. And I do have some very small nitpicks. Like, this one is also a short battle, but I feel like it's more understandable because they don't bring a lot of versatility to the table. I don't really like how they calculated Goro's speed, because he's never even met Cabal, so that doesn't really make a lot of sense to scale him to him. And it's not, again, like I said before, it's not the best matchup in terms of similarities go, as far as similarities go, but ultimately it's still very competent in so many other ways, like the animation, the analyses, the interpretation of the stats and everything like that, the jokes, everything like that. Like, it goes so far in those categories that it actually ends up taking the whole episode very far. Even with the small nitpicks I have, I still really enjoyed this one. I know a lot of other people really enjoyed it, so, good job, Death Battle. Coming in at number 3 is Genos versus War Machine. Now, I'm not really sure what the general consensus is for a lot of these fights. For some I do, but for some I don't. Although I have a feeling that I like this one significantly more than most people. And that goes for number 2 on my list as well, but we'll get into that later. But when I first heard about this fight, like Goro versus Machamp, I'm like, really? This is the best you can do? Like, I thought that these characters had better opponents for each other. I just thought it was going to be, kind of a weird fight, that it was going to happen, and then it was going to be forgotten after a while. But like Goro vs. Machamp, this definitely wasn't forgettable, and I was pleasantly surprised by everything. First of all, the animation is so appealing to look at. Again, it wasn't my first choice for a hand-drawn animation. I would have preferred it to be Danny versus Jake, but this really proved that you could have a really kick-ass hand-drawn fight, with two serious characters, not cartoon characters, not Deadpool versus Mask or anything like that, but you can actually have two serious characters in a hand-drawn animation style, and it can still be really badass. badass, you know what I mean? And the fight has grown, like, just the fight concept has really grown on me, like, the, you know, the kind of like the robotic sidekicks. I actually quite like it now the more I think about it. And I really don't have any issues with the analyses. There was nothing in there where I'm like, are you sure about that? Like, everything seemed pretty solid to me in terms of the analyses. And I learned quite a lot about not only Genos, who I didn't know much about before, but also War Machine. I was surprised by how much I learned about War Machine, and I have a new respect for him after this, so that's really cool. And, you know, this is one of those fights where I know I can return to it whenever I want and have a good time. It's one where I think back and I'm like, oh yeah, they did that one well. You know what I mean? That's one of those fights for me. And, you know, it's only lower than a couple of the other ones because I don't have strong attachments to either character. Not even War Machine, even though I really like Marvel, I don't particularly love War Machine. But as an episode on its own, in terms of all the categories, it's pretty damn good. Like, the analyses do it well, the animation does it very well, everything just works for this one, at least in my opinion. It does. So that's why I put it as high as I do. Coming in at number 2 is Miles Morales versus Static. Again, I don't really know the general consensus for most people as far as these battles go, as for most of these battles, but I can't get over how much I freaking love this one. If you don't like it, I understand, but I love it. I personally just really love it. First of all, the fight idea is just awesome. Having two, you know, universe-hopping teens, you know, from Marvel and DC who didn't initially start in the main Marvel and main DC timeline, I just think that's a really cool idea, like with Cable versus Booster Gold. And for me, the analysis is pretty close to perfect. I feel like they scaled Miles to Peter reasonably well. You can have your own disagreements with that, but that's personally what I think. And they went into great detail with both of the characters, giving more than enough feats to outline how powerful they are. You know, talking about their cartoon feats, but also talking about, you know, this is supported by this comic feat, or this cartoon feat supports this comic feat. You know what I mean? So I really like how they did that, because they don't always do that with Marvel and DC, or with anyone really. So I really like that. And the animation for me is extremely entertaining. Yes, it's just 2D, but it's well choreographed and just overall well done for just a 2D fight. And the battle music is amazing, guys. Like, I know I haven't talked too much about the music because the music kind of like doesn't really have any sort of great impact on me unless it's really, really cool. And for me, this is one that's just so cool. I listen to this one all the time, whether it's just on its own, or it's actually with the battle. You know, let's go to war, I'm seeing red when I walk on the edge. Yeah, I'm tearing through the net, I got a shock for the wet. I don't know, I love it so much. If you don't like it, I can kind of understand that, but at the same time, I can't really understand it because I just love it so much. But yeah, this one got me super excited for the rest of the season. And it's weird because I haven't had a Death Battle premiere get me so excited for the rest of the Death Battle season since Lara Croft versus Nathan Drake, which is odd considering that all of the fights, all the season premieres after that have been Marvel versus DC. But regardless, you know, this is what a far above Marvel versus DC fight looks to me. Far above average, I mean. A far above average Marvel versus DC fight looks to me. I just think it's so solid. I love both of these characters so much. They both have I have a history with both of them, and I don't know, I just love it so much, and I really hope you love it too, because I just think it's amazing. However, it's still only number 2, and coming in at number 1, you guys know what it is because I haven't said it yet. That's the only one I haven't said, is Obi-Wan Kenobi versus Kakashi. Now, I know for a fact that some people don't like this one. I understand that. But as a fan of both Obi-Wan Kenobi and Kakashi, and as a fan of both Star Wars and Naruto, I absolutely love it. This one is pretty close to perfect as far as Death Battle episodes go for me. First of all, I don't need to talk about this too much. The animation is absolutely incredible. It pulls out all the stops, you know, with all of the versatility that these characters have, especially for Kakashi. The genjutsu that Kakashi puts Obi-Wan into is so awesome. Seeing Darth Vader in 3D, even if it's just for seconds, and then like transform into Kakashi and everything like that, is so good. It really, this animation did a great job of showing how badass and cool each of them are, you know, in terms of their abilities. But then there's also the funny banter in the analyses and in the animation, and just so many epic moments. Like, the animation is just, it's perfect. The animation is perfect, and I don't think too many people are going to disagree with me on that. And the analysis was super informative, and it didn't hold too much back, while also making it difficult to judge who will win. And I think that's the way to do it. There have been so many death battles where I feel like they give me too much information, and I know who's going to win. But then there are also death battles where I feel like they don't give me enough information, so that, like, I'm completely left left in the dark, and that really bugs me sometimes. If you watch my reactions, you know that really bugs me. But I think this one did that so perfectly that they made it hard to judge who would win or to predict who would win after the analyses, but they still gave a good amount of information. So, you know, I think that's one of the reasons why I really, really like it. And both of the characters were well represented for the most part. I know that Kakashi's speed was lowballed. I understand that not everything was perfect, but I feel like they still made their points clear with enough evidence, and, you know, you were still able to come to your own conclusions, even if they did make some mistakes like that. And yes, no Susanoo is the way to go. I'm really sorry, you know, if you think that he should have gotten Susanoo, and I can understand that to a degree, but for me, it is the most accurate version of Kakashi to not give him Susanoo, and plus it's just outside help, you know? It's not his own thing. But anyway, that's just me. Overall, I love this fight from start to finish. It's full of prequel memes and full of great jokes. I love both of the characters so much, especially Kakashi, and it was so cool to see both of them in such an epic battle. Again, if you don't like it, I understand, but I really can't bring myself to say anything too bad about it. I'm just so happy that it exists, and I watch this one all the time. It's just so awesome. But anyway, I want to hear what you guys have to say about these fights. What's your list, or which ones do you like and which ones do you not like? You know, you can let me know down in the comments below. I'd really like to hear what you guys have to say. If you enjoyed this video, please give this video a huge like. I always appreciate the likes. Leave in the comments everything I said or anything you want to say, anything like that. If you could subscribe, that'd be so great as well. But no matter what you guys do, your view is plenty of contribution. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And that's it for me. I will see all of you guys in the next video. Peace out.